Hello, I'm Samantha Jolly. It's 4 o'clock and these are our top stories in Perth this afternoon. Security teams uncover disturbing tracking technology as Perth DV offenders spy on their victims. A grandmother fighting for life in the ICU stabbed in her own home. Royals join D-Day veterans 80 years after defeating the Nazis. And an iconic Perth theatre set to reopen to lovers of old film and nostalgia. A Perth grandmother who volunteered to help domestic violence victims is this afternoon in a critical condition after being attacked herself. Rachel Tassiger has the latest.
Paulette Mountford is still fighting for her life here at Royal Perth Hospital after a horror domestic violence attack on Tuesday night. The grandmother was found by neighbours in her front garden with stab wounds to her torso and neck. They provided first aid before paramedics arrived. 72-year-old Christopher John Sullivan is the man accused of trying to take Paulette's life. He was arrested by police after barricading himself inside the Gooseberry Hill home. His hands stained with blood and bagged up as evidence. He fronted court yesterday charged with attempting to kill. That's where he declined legal assistance by telling a magistrate, "No, I'm not fussed. I'm going to plead guilty anyway." Neighbours say the 60-year-old volunteered at a local church helping survivors of domestic violence.
She's very warm, very nice lady. Yes, just hope she gets better.
Her two daughters have been by her hospital bedside. They released a statement saying, "We are devastated and utterly heartbroken that our dear mother has endured such a horrifying ordeal and is now fighting for her life at RPH. For such a kind-hearted person to suffer so deeply is hard for us to comprehend. All we want at this time is for our mother to overcome her injuries, and we pray and hope that she gets better soon. She's a strong woman and we know she'll be using all her strength to get better." Paulette's family is understandably still in shock as doctors work to do everything they can.
Technology is allowing domestic violence perpetrators to stalk and intimidate their victims more than ever before. The problem is now so widespread, support services are flying interstate experts into WA to check the cars and homes of victims for GPS trackers and hidden cameras. Reporter James Carmody caught up with Steve Wilson from Protective Group.
How often would you say you find an AirTag on someone's vehicle?
5 or 6 times a week.
Yeah. God.
We used to find a lot more of these, the old-fashioned ones that would plug into the vehicle.
Yeah.
Whereas now we tend to find more the tags, the tiles.
What sort of places in the car might those be hidden?
These smaller ones, they're generally hidden behind number plates, under the spare wheel in the boot, under the seat, in the rear vision mirrors, places like that.
Places you'd never look.
Places you never look.
Tell me where you found this and what is it?
Hidden cameras. So found in a house in Perth some time ago. Yeah.
Whereabouts did they hide this one?
That one was in the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, filming in the garage. I found a camera set up in a home. There was 10 hidden cameras in every room, and behind a false wall was all the hard drives.
Oh,
so he would still connect to the Wi-Fi, the internet, and he could see in every room he'd put a hidden camera in, and categorised as well. Quite cunning.
In 7 News at 6, we'll show you more of the shocking things Steve has found in Perth homes this week and how to protect yourself if you suspect you're being tracked. Greens leader Adam Bandt is threatening to sue the Attorney-General, accusing him of defamation. Rob Scott is in Canberra with the details.
This relates to a television interview that Mark Dreyfus gave in which he accused the Greens leader and his party of encouraging violent behaviour and even criminal damage during pro-Palestine protests outside the electorate offices of a number of politicians, including his own and the Prime Minister's. Blockades which have seen offices splashed in red paint and some staff even threatened. Now, Mr Bandt has condemned any violence or vandalism and believes Mr Dreyfus's comments are defamatory.
They have been encouraging criminal damage of MPs' electorate offices, encouraging really riotous behaviour.
I think that the first law officer of this country should not make utterly unfounded statements and spread disinformation.
The government and the opposition have united against the Greens, accusing the party of using the war in Gaza to undermine social cohesion here in Australia. But rejecting that, Adam Bandt says the government's just distracting, accusing it of supporting the conflict.
The Prime Minister is desperate to make it about anything other than the children who are dying in Gaza.
It is beyond my comprehension why anyone in this place would seek to suggest that Australia were participants in a conflict when we are not.
Such an emotive issue for so many people. No doubt there is a lot more to play out here in Parliament.
Accused missing campus killer Greg Lynn has apologised to the families of his alleged victims. In a sensational day of testimony, the former pilot detailed how he wore his Jetstar gloves to clean the horrific scene.
It was standing room only as members of the public squeezed into a packed public gallery to watch Greg Lynn take the stand. It was silent as the defence team's one and only witness arrived and testified he did not kill the missing campers. The former pilot told the jury he used his Jetstar gloves to clean the horrendous crime scene following a confrontation involving a gun in the Wanagata Valley in March 2020. The whole plan, ill-conceived as it was for me to disappear, he told the jury. I wanted all trace of what happened to be gone with me. Prosecutors allege the 57-year-old killed secret lovers Russell Hill and Carol Clay without lawful justification, while Lynn claims they were accidentally killed in two separate struggles. I was trying to get the shotgun off him for the first time, and I was trying to defend myself the second time. All I can say to the families is that I'm very sorry for the suffering that I caused. In cross-examination, Mr Lynn said he was too late to go to police and never thought he could have gotten in his car and just driven away until today. Aren't you trained to be calm and rational? The Crown prosecutor asked. I had never been faced with two dead people before. I feared that I would be blamed for it. Improper storage of the firearm, which had resulted in the death of one person, would be devastating for me. Mr Lynn has admitted he burnt the couple's campsite and bundled their bodies into his trailer and dumped them in remote bushland. The prosecution and the defence will begin their closing arguments once Mr Lynn's evidence is complete.
A man has been fined $10,000 for shining a laser light at police in the sky. He did it on New Year's Eve while the helicopter was patrolling the Warnbro area. Officers on the ground were able to track him down. The 25-year-old was arrested at a home in Baldivis. 80 years ago today, Allied forces launched a fight back that would liberate Europe from Nazi tyranny. The last surviving D-Day veterans have been joined by senior royals and world leaders at commemorations on both sides of the English Channel. Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfeld is in Normandy.
It's from Portsmouth that much of the Allied Armada left from, and it's where 6,000 people gathered by the English Channel to commemorate the sacrifice of those who took part in what was to become the largest ever seaborne invasion, an enormous Operation Overlord, as it was called. 160,000 Allied troops storming the beaches here in Normandy to drive back the Nazis. The King, the Queen and Prince William joining dignitaries from around the world, descendants of those who fought and died and those few remaining D-Day veterans, all of them now well into their 90s or beyond the age of 100, all with incredible stories to tell. The Queen appearing to be visibly moved. The King saying today the number of surviving veterans is tragically dwindling.
All knew that both victory and failure were possible, and none could know their fate. It is a near impossible task to imagine the emotion of that day, the pride of being part of so great an enterprise.
Here on the Normandy coast, people have arrived from all over the world. 1 million people are expected to join services across Normandy later tonight, Australian time, on what is D-Day here in France. They are not just commemorating the sacrifice of those who fought, but also celebrating what was to become the liberation of France and continental Europe from Nazi rule. The King will be here along with the US President, Emmanuel Macron, the French President, the Ukrainian President too, the German Chancellor will be here, and Australia will be represented by the Governor-General.
An iconic cinema in Como is about to make a major comeback. As Rebecca Petrovska reports, millions has been spent on its transformation, which is set to open for lovers of old film and nostalgia.
One of the state's oldest theatres will reopen its curtains after a much-needed facelift. Built in 1938, the forgotten Como Theatre was once a vibrant entertainment hub for film fanatics. But just a couple of years ago, it was forced to close its doors.
It was pretty run down. The wall, you could see cracks in the walls. It was pretty scary. You know, this wall here was actually starting to fall down.
Now, new owners have spent the past 18 months restoring the old building to its former glory, carefully reinstating original architecture and decorative columns.
We wanted to bring that amazement of watching a film back to a beautiful old place like this, which was one of the first talkie cinemas in Perth.
More than $2 million has been invested to bring the glory of film back to Perth.
Film does have a lot more of a cinematic feel to it and a cinematic look to it. The contrast, the depth of colour, the clarity.
All that's left now, the top deck and final approvals before doors open in 2 weeks. And on top of film movies, stand-up comedy, poetry, plays and live performances are also flagged for the new look venue. It's just the first step in a move to reinvigorate Preston Street, with the area earmarked for more redevelopment. We'll have those details in the news at 6.
Thanks for being with us on 7's Afternoon News. Coming up, bird flu death. A deadly strain of the virus detected in humans for the first time. And Boeing sends astronauts hurtling towards space. You're watching 7's 4 p.m. news live from Perth. A cold front is moving closer to Perth. The rain is already here and there's a severe thunderstorm warning current for areas south of the city, including Henderson and Rockingham. More details in the forecast, which is coming up soon. It was the murder case that made global headlines. Amanda Knox, the American exchange student who was jailed, then cleared of killing her British roommate in Italy, has had her conviction for slander upheld. A court found she wrongly accused a Congolese bar owner, where she worked part-time, of stabbing Meredith Kircher to death in 2007.
Amanda is very upset, and from the outcome of this hearing, she was looking to have a final point of all this 17 years now judicial procedure.
Knox was sentenced to 3 years prison for the slander conviction, which she served while awaiting the original murder trial and subsequent appeal. The World Health Organization is sounding the alarm this afternoon. A man in Mexico has died after contracting a strain of bird flu, the first lab-confirmed human case of infection with the variant. The 59-year-old had multiple underlying medical conditions, but hadn't been exposed to poultry when his symptoms set in. 4 people have died and more than 20 others are injured after a passenger train collided head-on with a freight train in the Czech Republic. The crash happened late at night, 100 kilometres east of Prague. 300 passengers were on board. Third time's the charm for Boeing's Starliner launch. After scrubbing the test mission twice, the crewed capsule carrying 2 NASA astronauts took off on its maiden voyage. This afternoon, it's hurtling toward the International Space Station. US correspondent Miley Hogan reports.
It was a successful takeoff this morning, the rocket making a flawless launch.
And liftoff of Starliner at Atlas V, carrying 2 American heroes.
Roaring off from Cape Canaveral in Florida, accelerating into the sky, the Boeing Starliner successfully separated from the rocket minutes after takeoff. On board 2 NASA astronauts, Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore, for the first ever piloted test flight. It's a major milestone for the project, which has been plagued by multiple delays, including 2 previous launch attempts.
We all know that when the going gets tough, and it often does, the tough get going. And you have. And Sonny and I are honored to share this dream of spaceflight with each and every one of you. So with that, Elsie, let's get going.
The astronauts will run a series of tests on the spacecraft, their job to make sure it's safe for humans to travel in for future flights. They're currently on their way to the International Space Station, on track to dock there tomorrow. It's all part of Boeing's efforts to develop a spacecraft to rival Elon Musk's SpaceX capsule. It's currently NASA's main form of transport to get astronauts to the International Space Station. If all goes well, Boeing hopes to have its first operational flight early next year. idea, giving NASA more options to send astronauts into space.
Melbourne's Werribee Zoo visitors are falling in love with a new arrival, an antelope who leaves a trail of hearts wherever she goes. Nazia is a 1-year-old waterbuck with a heart-shaped nose and also heart-shaped hooves. She's joined the herd from a safari park in South Australia and, according to keepers, is loving life on the Werribee savannah. Ahead this news hour, the controversial rendition of the national anthem. Did it miss the mark at last night's State of Origin? And later, everyone's Disney favourites arrive in Perth, ready to take to the ice. Our reporter takes you behind the scenes. Adrian Barich joins us now, and the Eagles have named their team for Saturday, Barra.
They have, Sammy. I've got it right here, and Jake Waterman is back, so that's big news. That's next. Plus, a pair of Dockers hit some high notes at the weekend. Caleb Serong nominated for Goal of the Year for this stunner, while Jai Amos took to the clouds to drag down a contender for Mark of the Year. And Australia makes a shaky start to the T20 World Cup. The West Coast Eagles will welcome back leading goal kicker Jake Waterman for their clash with North Melbourne. Jai Cully is also back after missing last year with a knee injury. Jack Hutchinson will debut for West Coast just 10 days after being picked up in the mid-season draft. Barely enough time to meet all of his new teammates. The 22-year-old kicked 5 goals against Perth in his first waffle game for the Eagles on Sunday in Northam. And brilliant Docker Caleb Serong is up for Goal of the Year after this stunning effort against Melbourne in Alice Springs at the weekend.
Serong! His first goal of the season is something special, and so is the day for the Dockers.
Sure was. Tall forward Jai Amos is also nominated for Mark of the Year for this beauty in the second quarter. Amos using teammate Michael Walters as a stepladder. Essendon and Carlton are both gearing up for a blockbuster King's Birthday Eve clash. A crowd of 90,000 is expected at the MCG on Sunday, and there's no shying away from the occasion.
Last year's inaugural King's Birthday Eve game was massive, and this promises to be even bigger.
We'll certainly sort of talk about it, the opposition and the rivalry, and we'll take that all in, and we'll understand that there's a lot of discussion around us as a footy team.
And tonight it's the Tigers and the Crows from Adelaide Oval to open up round 13. Playing without Pat Cummins, Mitch Marsh's Aussies overcame a jittery start to win their T20 World Cup opener against Minnows Oman by 39 runs in Barbados. Glenn Maxwell's Golden Duck left the Aussies teetering at 3 for 50 in the 9th over.
Oh, what a grab! What a grab that is! Akib Elias, the skipper, that is quite brilliant.
David Warner and Marcus Stoinis led the rescue mission with half centuries. Stoinis hitting an unbeaten 67 to lift the total to 5 for 164. The all-rounder also starred with the ball, snaring 3 for 19. Mitchell Starc left the field with what's hoped was only cramp at the start of his final over. And Alex de Minaur's French Open run is over, but the Aussie leaves Roland Garros with a career-high world ranking of 9. Playing 4th seed Alexander Zverev in the quarterfinals, de Minaur failed to convert a set point in the second set, then blew a 4-0 lead in the tiebreak. Zverev went on to close it out in straight sets, 6-4, 7-6, 6-4.
Alex de Minaur's run here, his maiden Roland Garros quarterfinal in it. It all comes to an end.
And in the women's singles, 17-year-old Andriva Amira pulled off a stunning quarter-final upset, defeating world number 2 and Australian Open and Open champ Arina Sabalenka, 6-7, 6-4, 6-4. And the State of Origin opener was rocked by a brutal hit in the opening minutes. The high tackle left Maroon's star fullback Reece Walsh unconscious, resulting in Joseph Suali getting sent off and facing a 4-game ban for dirty play.
What a sensation. The 6th man in Origin history to be sent off.
Look, I didn't mean it at all. I just went there to go tackle him and accidentally clipped his head. So I hope he's doing all right.
After the send-off, the Blues were smashed 38-10, their worst ever defeat in Sydney. Game 2 is on at the MCG on June 26. OK, more footy news at 6 o'clock, including the rest of the Eagles team. Over to you, Sammy.
All right, Farah, we'll see you then. And back to the Origin. Last night's national anthem for the state of Origin has divided opinions. The performance by Australian Idol winner Dylan Wright had many up in arms for not sticking to the script.
Yes, well, hasn't it caused a stir? It was not the traditional version many fans might be used to or believe that it should have been, but with guitar in hand, the reality show winner Dylan Wright strummed out a version that many found difficult to sing along with. And as you say, it certainly has stirred up a lot of talk, both for and against it today.
I love country music style, but I wasn't real impressed, to be honest. It just wasn't, the true anthem that, Aussies are used to.
To me, the national anthem is, you've got to treat it with respect. Bells it out. I just thought it was too slow. You couldn't sing to that.
I thought he did a good job.
A lot of people are bagging him. It's a bit rough.
Yeah, no, I thought it was all right.
But the NRL stand by their choice and say the anthem will always divide opinions, but were more than happy with their choice and what Dylan delivered last night. We took to the streets today, though, to see if anyone could do better.
I'm actually a singer with Queensland Performing Arts QPAC Choir. Australia's all let us rejoice, for we are one and free.
Give him the job. Game 2's yours. Looks like we have a winner, and we're told the anthem tonight for the women's Origin match in Newcastle will definitely be a crowd pleaser.
Stay with us. Up next, a toddler held up at gunpoint. A gang bashes down the door of a home, assaulting the family inside. A midnight crash. Perth police hunt a driver who ran from this scene in the city.
7 News knows Perth.
Headlines flash by all day.
But to know the news, watch 7 News at 6 o'clock.
And here's why.
Our reporters are newsbreakers.
The man in the back of that police car was arrested right here on the side of busy Belia Drive.
With more exclusive reports that dig deeper
and demand answers.
We commit to travel to wherever the stories happen, even the front line.
Chris Reason from Channel 7 Australia.
As international news unfolds in Europe.
We're live to you at 6 p.m.
Breaking down the global issues that matter back home in Perth. 7 News understands that
our reporters travel from suburb to suburb.
It happened at Point Walter
and across our state to bring you the news.
This show only in Joondalup.
This is the team we trust.
And thank you
for trusting 7 News.
Hello, you're watching 7's Afternoon News live from Perth. Here are the top stories. Increasing instances of disturbing tracking technologies being uncovered in Perth cars and homes. Interstate security teams are being brought in, inundated with calls to help victims stop violent family members from monitoring their every move. A Gooseberry Hill grandmother is right now in a Perth ICU fighting for life. She was allegedly stabbed by a 72-year-old man in her own home. Former Jetstar pilot Greg Lynn has taken the stand at his trial, accused of killing an elderly couple who shared his campground. He has described the scene as horrific, but denies he murdered them. And an old school film theatre in Como is about to make a comeback. After major renovations, it'll reopen in a couple of weeks to Perth lovers of nostalgia and iconic movies. A strong cold front is moving over the south of the state this afternoon. We could get some severe storms in the metro area. There is a warning current for areas south of Mandurah. I'll have your weekend forecast later this hour. Grandmother Paulette Mountford is still fighting for her life at Royal Perth Hospital after a horror domestic violence attack on Tuesday night. She was found by neighbours in her front garden with stab wounds to her torso and neck. They provided first aid before paramedics arrived.
She's very warm, very nice lady. Yeah, just hope she gets better.
72-year-old Christopher John Sullivan is the man accused of trying to take Paulette's life. He fronted court yesterday, charged with attempting to kill after barricading himself inside the Gooseberry Hill home. Domestic violence perpetrators are increasingly using technology in new and evil ways to abuse their victims. 7 News caught up with Steve Wilson, who flies around the country removing hidden cameras and GPS tracking devices from the homes and cars of victims. This week, he's made some disturbing discoveries in Perth.
A hidden camera in a property that was filming the victim. Another victim that had her heating and air conditioning were compromised because he was able to access her heating and cooling and to be able to turn that on and off as he thought fit. And another lady just with her phone that he was still accessing her Google accounts.
We'll bring you the full story in 7 News at 6 and advice on how to stay safe. Police are hunting a driver on the run this afternoon after crashing a Volkswagen Golf in a Mount Lawley apartment complex. The car smashed through a brick wall on William Street around midnight. The driver fled before officers got to the scene. 8 people, including a 2-year-old boy, have been held at gunpoint by a gang during a home invasion in Sydney southwest. 2 of the occupants were assaulted. The families say they don't know why they were targeted.
Good afternoon. The residents of this Hinchinbrook home say they'll have to move out after they were terrorised by a large group of masked intruders last night. Police were called to Bowerbird Street shortly after 10:30 p.m. when the family inside called 000 saying they'd been held at gunpoint by 9 intruders.
Those offenders were wearing balaclavas and gloves, and 3 of those offenders, 2 of which were armed with shotguns and 1 was armed with a pistol.
They bashed down the door demanding cash and electronic devices. Amy Ellis, who has lived here with her 4 children and grandchildren, claims she was forced to shield her 2-year-old grandson as the men repeatedly attacked her husband, Mohammed Dabas. He was taken to hospital with head and shoulder injuries. His son was also injured.
I couldn't hear exactly what they were yelling, but I just heard a lot of shouting. Yeah, it was pretty scary at that time of night.
It's distressing to have anyone barge into your home. It's confronting, and it would have been quite chaotic for the family.
The offenders took off in 2 separate getaway cars. Police are still trying to work out if this attack was random or targeted.
A Melbourne jury has been told accused murderer Greg Lynn lied to his wife about the missing campers, saying he had nothing to do with it. The former pilot has spent the day on the witness stand at his own murder trial. He says to this day he has still never spoken to his family about the campsite confrontation that led to the deaths of secret lovers Russell Hill and Carol Clay. He also told the court disposing of their bodies was a difficult task. The jury will begin deliberations next week. 3 workers employed by the same local council in Sydney have developed thyroid cancer in the space of 5 years, prompting an immediate investigation. The staff, who all worked on the same floor, have been moved to a different level. The council says it can't be sure if the cluster is connected to their workplace. Former President Donald Trump's gun licence is expected to be revoked now that he is a convicted felon. The historic verdict in the hush money trial means his already suspended licence could be taken away by the City of New York. Trump will be sentenced on July 11, just days before the Republican Party's national convention. The 7 News Young Achiever Awards will be announced tomorrow night in Perth. Surge Fitness Sports Award finalist AFLW star Emma O'Driscoll spoke to Sunrise's Matt Tinney to discuss her career challenges and role models.
Now, we could talk about your achievements, including being named in the All-Australian team, but what I really want to know is how did somebody who grew up in the country, has performance anxiety, has been diagnosed with ADHD, get to where you are now?
It's certainly been challenging, Matt. However, I feel like I've got a great support around me in my friends, my family and my teammates. And definitely growing up regionally has its challenges. I remember studying for Year 12 and Mum driving me down to Perth and having to write my notes for my WACE exams in Year 12 on the way down. But I wouldn't change it for the world, and I'll always remember where I came from and try and give back to that community as much as I possibly can as well.
How does having ADHD impact you?
I use my ADHD as a strength, I would say. I'm the hyperactive and hyperfixated type of ADHD. And so I do tell people that I remain as on task as I possibly can during my football games, which is why I do get very wide eyes and get very focused on the ball.
How was it growing up and I suppose not having those female football role models in that time?
Yeah, it's certainly very difficult. You can't be what you can't see, so I never even thought I would be a footballer. I had my two younger brothers grow up with football idols, and I feel like I just jumped on the back of them with saying, yeah, you know, Matt Pavlich is my favourite player, even though I never really watched a lot of footy. I always grew up wanting to be a netballer, and I would see the West Coast Fever players on TV and think that's what I wanted to do, and hopefully I can be that person for a lot of young women at the moment.
Well, Emma, we wish you all the best for the awards tomorrow night. Good luck.
Thanks, Matt.
After the break, Rick Arden joins us with the very latest from the 7 newsroom. And later I'll have details on the severe weather moving through the metro area.
Seven News knows Perth.
Headlines flash by all day.
But to know the news, watch 7 News at 6 o'clock.
And here's why.
Our reporters are newsbreakers.
The man in the back of that police car was arrested right here on the side of busy Belia Drive.
With more exclusive reports that dig deeper
and demand answers.
We commit to travel to wherever the stories happen, even the front line.
Chris Reason from Channel 7 Australia.
As international news unfolds in Europe,
We're live to you at 6 p.m.
breaking down the global issues that matter back home in Perth. 7 News understands that
Our reporters travel from suburb to suburb.
it happened at Point Walter
and across our state to bring you the news.
This show only in Joondalup.
This is the team we trust.
And thank you
for trusting 7 News.
New research shows social interaction is not just good for the soul, but also for the heart. Scientists watched 10,000 Australians aged over 70 for more than 6 years and found those in a relationship had a lower risk of developing cardiac disease. Here's a little of what researchers at Monash University told 7 News earlier.
So what we did is we looked at 10,000 older Australians aged 70 years or more that were healthy, and we asked them about their socialising activities. And what we found was that a few key social activities are really important for cardiovascular health. One of them is, first of all, being partnered or in a marital relationship. For women, there was a 17% lower risk of cardiovascular disease, and for men, it was a 12% lower risk. For women, it's really important to have 3 or more friends that you can discuss private matters with. We found a 30% decreased risk of cardiovascular disease. For men, relatives were more important. We needed 3 to 8 relatives that you feel like discussing private matters with, or that you can call on for help. So either of those would be great, as well as playing games, and like card games or chess with another person was beneficial for your cardiovascular health. What my findings have found is that we could consider socialising as a modifiable risk factor, which means that you can make changes to your lifestyle to decrease your cardiovascular health, and that potentially we could be incorporating this in heart health checks. This could be through, for instance, doing physical activity in groups like Park Run or the Heart Foundation walking groups, or it could be separately, so looking at interests in groups with other people.
And we'll have more on that story in 7 News at 6 o'clock. A suburban street in Chicago has been rocked by a deadly explosion. A 77-year-old man's body was recovered from the rubble after a home exploded into flames. 2 other homes were also damaged. The cause is under investigation. A diet high in sodium or salt might increase the risk of eczema, according to a new US study. It's the type of dermatitis that causes dry, itchy skin. Scientists recently discovered that excess sodium is stored in the skin, where it may play a role in the inflammation. Just 1 extra gram or half a teaspoon of salt increases the likelihood of flare-ups by 22%. A check of finance now with Laura Bessarati from CommSec, and it was a strong session for the Aussie market.
The Aussie market managed to extend its winning streak to a second straight session, posting a gain of 53 points or 0.7%, putting us within arm's reach of that record high that we hit about 2 months ago, now roughly 1% away from those levels. It certainly has been a day where we've seen improvements right across the board, with all 11 sectors ending in positive territory. Those mining and energy stocks rebounded from 2 days of sharp falls. The big banks, healthcare, tech, all helping today. However, we did see education provider IDP Education on the losers list, hitting a 4-year low after flagging that government restrictions placed on international students are likely to impact the amount of students seeking their services. And right now, the Aussie dollar currently buys 66.5 US cents.
Perth 6 p.m. news is coming up with Rick Arden, and Rick, a child sex predator has faced Perth's District Court.
Sam, he has. Brendan Lee McDonald tried to kidnap 4 children in Ellenbrook. We learnt today that he was also on bail at the time for a shocking sex crime against a teenager. The details from the courtroom are frightening. We'll bring you that story in the news at 6. We'll also bring you an update on Gooseberry Hill grandmother Paulette Mountford. We're learning more about the 60-year-old and the outreach program she volunteered at most weeks. Also tonight, the country's biggest union is considering whether it'll fight for 5 weeks of annual leave instead of 4. It follows its latest campaign to scrap lower wages for younger adults. Plus, the widow of the Outback Wranglers co-star has faced off with the star in court. She's suing Matt Wright for damages after a deadly helicopter crash. Find out if they reached an agreement. And Hollywood has descended down under as a major film festival opens. We'll show you that and more. 7 News tonight at 6, Sam.
Look forward to it. We'll see you then. Thanks, Rick. Perth Zoo is fundraising to buy a critical piece of medical equipment. A new ultrasound machine is needed to ensure sick animals receive an accurate diagnosis, like Matsiro the lemur, who recently had some troubles with his liver. Anyone who is able to donate is encouraged to visit the Perth Zoo website. A toddler in the US has had a close encounter with a giraffe while on safari in Texas. The 2-year-old was feeding the animal when it took an interest in her instead.
I saw the giraffe kind of digging around right there, and then it just grabbed her and I didn't see her no more.
Along with a tall tale, little Paisley now has a toy giraffe to remember the experience. For more than 35 years, Disney on Ice has dazzled Australian audiences. Tonight, its 7-city tour premieres in Perth with the return of much-loved characters and some new favourites. Francesca Danuccio spoke with the show's host.
Well, the show has come a long way since it first took to the ice in Australia in 1986. This performance is the 36th edition and it's set to be bigger and better than ever before. I'm here with host of the show, Patrick Quinn. Patrick, what can audiences expect in this show?
Yes, well, audiences can expect to look at the ice like they always have, but also in this show you get to look up into the sky as some of your favourite characters will soar over your heads. Lots of aerial stuff.
And what's new about this performance than other shows?
Well, in this performance, we've got some new shows debuting, like Mary Poppins, The Incredibles, and a live-action rendition of The Lion King. It's great.
And can we expect to see any audience interaction at all?
Oh, yes. Okay, the audience can expect to be on point at any time. See, we'll be walking through the audience with a camera. If we take your picture, we can end up on the big screens back here behind us. You could end up riding on the car, on the ice itself, or involved in any myriad of games with the cast.
Thanks, Patrick. The show premieres tonight at RAC Arena. At 6, get your first look at the Disney on Ice spectacle.
Looks great. Thanks, Francesca. A strong cold front is moving through right now. There is a severe thunderstorm warning for areas south of the city, including Henderson and Rockingham. Your forecast is right after the break.
Seven News knows Perth.
Headlines flash by all day.
But to know the news, watch 7 News at 6 o'clock.
And here's why.
Our reporters are newsbreakers.
The man in the back of that police car was arrested right here on the side of busy Belia Drive.
With more exclusive reports that dig deeper
And demand answers.
We commit to travel to wherever the stories happen, even the front line.
Chris Reason from Channel 7 Australia.
As international news unfolds in Europe.
We're live to you at 6 p.m.
breaking down the global issues that matter back home in Perth. 7 News understands that
Our reporters travel from suburb to suburb.
it happened at Point Walter
And across our state to bring you the news.
This show only in Joondalup.
This is the team we trust.
And thank you
For trusting 7 News.
Now, Fuel Watch. Perth's petrol prices brought to you by Fuel Watch and 7 News.
Checking the weather now, a strong cold front is moving through this afternoon and tonight. There's already a severe thunderstorm warning for areas south of the city. We could get storms across the metro area over the next couple of hours. Let's take a look at the national forecast. Afternoon showers in Canberra tomorrow, rain easing in Sydney, cloudy and 17 in Adelaide. And back to Perth, that severe weather will ease tomorrow, a top of 20 and a shower or two. The rain will hang around for the weekend, slightly warmer on Saturday, 21 the max. Sunday we could get up to 15 mils of rain. Looking into next week, more showers and temps around 20 degrees, and it will start to get chilly, just 11 degrees overnight next Wednesday and Thursday. And that is Perth's 4 p.m. news. I'm Samantha Jolly. I'll be back with Rick and Ryan for 7 News at 6. The Chase Australia is next.